Adele is the main protagonist of this story. She is in Egypt right now on a journey to find the mummy of Patmosis, an Egyptian pharaoh's advisor. She hires two locals to help her get into Patmos's tomb, despite the fact that it is against the law. They realize that the townspeople are actually criminals who are after the gems in the tomb. They threatened her, but they can't go without her, so yeah, they got no other option. Surprisingly, they agreed to give Adele the mummy in exchange for the fortune. Adele searches for another way out as they discover the treasure-filled coffin. However, something triggers the tomb's anti-theft mechanism, resulting in the robbers' demise. When Professor Dave and the cops break into the tomb, Adele is taken away by them. They clearly know each other, but of course they're rivalries, and Dave is curious as to why on earth she is there. Adele has no choice but to admit that she is motivated by Professor Jose's book to bring Patmosis back to life in order to help her sister. Dave dismisses the proposal and instructs the cops to arrest her. They intend to put her to death without holding a trial. Adele smartly requests a cigarette as her final wish. When she is granted one, she kicks Dave into the mummy-making machine and sets fire to the tomb. She then jumps into Patmos's coffin and pushes it down a river-connected well. Back in Paris now, Chopard is a middle-aged man who appears to be exhausted or probably drunk. He's had a little too much to drink after a demanding workday and has to use the restroom. When he can't find one, he chooses to go straight in front of a large statue. As he finishes, he is startled away by an odd light that appears nearby. But what he thought wasn't anything extraordinary, as if it was some police signal not to throw there. But it was the magic done by renowned physicist Professor Mary Joseph, better known by the nickname Jose. Jose is occupied with mental experiments because he thinks that life can go on after death. Wait, he is trying something. I'm not mistaken, because at the same time, a massive, extremely ancient dinosaur egg is about to hatch. Jose uses his mental abilities to reveal a huge flying dinosaur. He commands the creature to fly through the glass ceiling, but it hits a passing automobile because he momentarily loses focus. Chopard, who just so happened to witness the horrific tragedy, reports the incident to the authorities. Everyone is shocked, nearly disbelieved, to learn that a dinosaur caused a car to fall into a river. Fearing being attacked by the dinosaur, some people get so fearful that they decide not to go to work at all. The president of Frost gives the national police instructions to concentrate on the matter in order to address this recent issue. Here we're going to meet Andre Zubero, a young man who works alongside Dr. Menard at a botanical garden. He is a devoted reader and a huge admirer of the writer Adele Blanc-Sec. He tries to win Adele's heart by writing her letters in his spare time. Andre feels saddened by Adele's lack of interest. At the Natural History Museum, Professor Dave is saved barely in time by his goons. While some believe a visitor destroyed the glass ceiling, Professor Maynard observes the broken pterodactyl egg. However, Maynard finds that the egg's shells are still linked, suggesting that it was cracked internally. This indicates that the pterodactyl broke out and took off on its own. When Inspector Capone shows up to look into things, Maynard masks his findings and suggests that Capone speak with Professor Jose, as he already has a reputation of doing such unnatural experiments. Jose is at his house feeding the enormous pterodactyl when Inspector Capone bursts through the door. Jose conceals the enormous bird behind heavy curtains in a panic, hoping to prevent unwanted attention. However, Capone shows up at Jose's house while he begins preparing boiled eggs to serve their uninvited guests. The pterodactyl suddenly loses its temper as it wasn't under control for the moment and strikes Capone before taking off. The inspector is alarmed by this and orders his men to arrest Jose. On the other side, Adele has just returned home with the most demanded mummy. Here we know she shares a home with her bedridden sick sister. A long time ago, a hairpin got lodged in her sister's head, causing an unknown illness, so that's why she needed some ancient doctor to help her sister. Adele notices a bunch of letters from Andre, her heart fan, but she simply ignores them. Later, she saw news of Jose being involved in some strange scenario and being caught for having a flying creature. She knew he could help her with the mummy doctor, so she poses as a lawyer and visits the jail. Jose claims he can revive animals such as the pterodactyl, but he is unable to do so while imprisoned. Okay, so she needed him to revive the mummy so it can heal her sister. Jose told her that being imprisoned he couldn't help her, even if he wanted to. So Adele tried a lot of get-ups to release him, but every time ended up being caught and thrown out of jail. When she eventually makes it to Posey's cell after many attempts, she finds out he's moved and will be put to death in the morning. Adele chooses to approach the president for assistance because she is aware that she cannot save Jose on her own. When she went to meet him, she was one of the first reporters to speak with him. Adele discusses Jose with him, emphasizing his significance to the scientific community in France. The president says he will investigate. As he tosses a ball for his pet dog, that pterosaur was about to attack the president, believing it to be an egg. Adele sees this and steps in to save him, but the large bird goes unnoticed. Adele is being held because they believe she attacked the president. In the meantime, Capone contracts a South African hunter to capture the pterodactyl. Later, Andre shows Maynard the pterodactyl's nest. Andre used his knowledge of dinosaurs to persuade the bird into constructing a nest in the backyard. Maynard is shocked and compliments Andre on his intelligence. After Adele gets freed from the police's custody, she goes straight home and takes a bath to help her forget her problems at least for a while. She finds out that the bird resides in Maynard's botanical garden when she reads Andre's most recent letter while taking a bath. She goes to Andre, gives him a kiss, and requests to be led to the bird, hoping it will bring her to Professor Joe's. When Adele gets to the garden, she makes friends with the pterodactyl and uses it to stop Professor Joes from being put to death. They make their way back to the garden, where Maynard is delighted to see Chose because they were buddies as kids. Suddenly, the pterodactyl got shot by some hunter as everyone was after that creature, and revealed the fact that their souls appear to be united. This causes the beast and host to suffer. Adele moves quickly because they didn't have much time now, as Toast begins to tumble and may lose his life anytime. Adele asks Andre to keep an eye on the creature. In order to assist her ill sister, she and Professor Joes rush back to her house. The professor attempts several magic spells and creates a circle of ancient objects, but in the middle of it, he tragically dies. When Adele learns that Hose resurrected Patmosis before his passing, she is amazed. A flashback reveals that Adele's sister suffered an injury during their tennis match. Adele dropped the ball that made her sister fall onto her back, head falling on her hairpin after accidentally hitting her in the forehead with the ball. Now Patmosis informed her that he couldn't treat her sister, but he knows someone who can help. Adele was disheartened that how will she bring back to life the other mummies, so he informed that Cozy's mind was powerful enough to bring the mummies back up to 2 kilometers of the land. Now she rushes off to the Louvre with Patmosis and her sister, entering secretly to the museum with his assistants. She awakens Ramses and his attendants in the museum. When Patmosis informs the pharaoh of Adele's sister, the pharaoh initially becomes furious, believing it to be a minor issue. Adele breaks down in tears and admits to feeling guilty for the past 5 years when everything looks lost because her sister was in this critical condition. The pharaoh becomes sympathetic to Adele after hearing her depressing story. He chooses to support his physician, Nutmas, in treating Adele's sister. Nutmas removes the hairpin from her sister's head in a matter of seconds. Then, he utilizes some old components to create a special potion that he applies to her sister's forehead to cover the hole. The pharaoh gives her a kiss and wraps off the process by bandaging her head. He then mentions that he and the rest of his party are heading out to get sandwiches. Adele is overjoyed when her sister eventually wakes up, which happens a short while later. They give one another a tight hug and cry some little happy tears. After all, it was a huge process and her true love to get her sister back. After a few weeks, Andre knocks on Adele's door once more, but this time he brings flowers. When he doesn't find Adele there, he delivers the flowers to her sister, initiating their love affair. Thank you for being part of this story. Take care and stay tuned for the next story.